So the theme of this video series has been on controlling costs. This topic is a little more unorthodox than most, but in parts of the state we're experiencing some drought conditions, and maybe second cutting hay is a little short, maybe grass pastures are a little short. So turnout onto a hay field is something that's a real possibility for a lot of producers in the state in the summer of 2020. This video will talk about the progression of how this alfalfa pasture was managed in a rotational system and what management techniques differ from a traditional grass legume pasture. We're standing here in southeast Iowa in the middle of a 10-acre alfalfa field. This field was fertilized 2 years ago and interseeded at the same time as the fertilizer application with perennial ryegrass and orchard. As you can see, the grass came pretty well, and the alfalfa stand is still really good. You can see the cows have been in here for 2 days. Full bloom alfalfa laying here on the ground that the cows have trampled and been through. But we're going to talk about some of the things that were done prior to turnout, and then how we manage the cows through a grazing alfalfa paddock. So first things first, prior to turnout, for 24 hours these cows were offered bloat blocks, a preventative measure to keep them from bloating on alfalfa. We know there is a risk of bloat when turning out on alfalfa. So these cows were offered that for 24 hours, and then continuously they've been on this paddock for 2 days now. There's some other mineral sprinkled back in. This particular mineral has garlic in it to help with fly control. Another aspect you can do is offer them rumensin, but keep in mind you cannot mix by the label bloat guard and rumensin together in a feed. So always follow label directions, but offer bloat guard prior to turnout. So you might be wondering why it's late June and we're just now turning out into this paddock of alfalfa, and I'll show you a couple of reasons why. This part of the hillside was very poor for hay production. As you can see, even today it's really short, and the alfalfa is not mature yet, so I had to wait a few more weeks. You can see some plants here that still aren't full bloom. You want to wait until that alfalfa is in full bloom before you turn out. The other reason is what you see over here. Those are the paddocks that I've been in all spring. That's predominantly fescue, so we decided to kind of beat the fescue back pretty hard and keep it from heading out, and then go back on it and fall graze fescue after we've stockpiled it in July, August, and maybe part of September. A couple more of the management techniques we used here before we turned out. We took a batwing mower around the field edges just to make sure the cows knew where the fences were, and also knocked out some invasive weed species that were creeping in from the pasture side of the fence. We've also built some temporary fence, as you can see here in this alleyway, to allow the cows access to fresh, clean water. And actually, as I'm videoing this here, the cows are in that shade tree area, shaded up for the afternoon. Today's actually June 25th, 2020. And if you've been following the weather patterns, this farm actually had about 9.5 inches of rain in about a 4-day period about 2 weeks ago. So getting on this paddock was a bit of a challenge. But the other reason we decided to make this paddock hayfield into a grazing hayfield is I'll pan over. The road and the farmstead, you can see right there, are a half a mile away. And with the 9.5 inches of rain, there's a culvert that we must cross, and it is no longer safe to take a bale trailer on. So made the decision to graze this rather than hay it. And I'm glad we did. We would not be able to get hay off of this field and up to the house. The other aspect of this is cutting 2 and 3 predominantly off of this particular hay field were really poor. It's a light soil. You take the alfalfa off and open up a lot of bare ground and get a hot spell, and it absolutely just cooks the soil. Cutting 2 and 3 have never been very productive off this farm. So it's about day 7 on this paddock, and I was just checking progress on how the cows are doing. And want to point out that it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and if you look down at my shoes here, you can see they are wet. So it's very important that on day one, when you turn these cows out, that you wait till the dew comes off, and then make sure that those cows are full and happy before they come onto a paddock like this. On day one, we turned out at about 1 p.m. when the grass was dry. And as you might imagine, the cows had grazed all morning, were full, loafing underneath the shade tree, and then we pushed them into here so they wouldn't load up on the new alfalfa. So in conclusion, grazing alfalfa can be a great way to control cow costs, particularly in periods of extended drought or in a hay shortage situation where hay is either too expensive to purchase or just in short supply. Always remember, prior to turnout, offer some paloxylene, also known as bloat guard. Follow label directions on how long this needs to be offered prior to turnout. Make sure the alfalfa is in full bloom. Height is not a big issue, but just make sure the plants are mature. There's less bloat risk as the plants are mature. Do not turn out hungry cows. The last thing you want is to introduce alfalfa to the rumen of a hungry animal and have her load up on that forage. Increases the bloat risk. When you turn out on day one, wait until the morning dew has dried up, and also don't turn out directly after a rain. Rotational grazing is recommended. Defoliating or overgrazing alfalfa can certainly thin the stand over time. And finally, dilution is the solution. If you have time or to put this into your grazing plan, add some other grasses to alfalfa fields to dilute the amount of alfalfa those animals consume in one day.